Well, it looks like it is right at noon, so we will go ahead and get started. I know we still have some who are going to be joining us, but just to make the best use of our time, we're going to go ahead and get started, and they can just keep jumping in. So I just want to welcome everyone to our July training event, and the subject of our training event today is partnering with pastors. And as Carl and I meet with all of you on our monthly calls each week, the question that we just kept hearing come up over and over again from CMIs all across the country is, how do we get pastoral buy-in for marriage ministries? And so we're excited about today, because what we're going to do is we have the incredible opportunity to just delve into a wealth of experiences and best practices on this very subject. And we're going to get to hear some really invaluable nuggets of wisdom on partnering and connecting and understanding the heart of a pastor from some of our amazing CMI teams. And we just always love hearing from you guys, and you guys have so much wisdom, and we always learn so much from all of you. Also, as always, I want to remind you that we will have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the call. So we want to hear from all of you, and really your engagement is really vital to make this as an interactive and to make it as valuable as it possibly can be for all of us. And I also do want to let you know that we are recording the entire session, so you can always go back and you can rewatch anything that you'd like to revisit. And so before we begin today, we just always want to open in prayer. And today we're going to have Suzetta Land from Maryland Marriage Initiative, and she's going to be leading us in prayer today. So Suzetta, whenever you're ready.
Okay. Can everyone hear me okay? Good.
Yes.
Goodbye. Okay, awesome. All right, eyes closed and heads bowed, please. Father, we thank you for this day and all the blessings you have bestowed upon us. As we embark on the mission of building, strengthening, and supporting marriages and families, not only individually, but collectively, we pray that will be done. We pray we are a light unto those we minister to, and we pray healing and restoration for marriages and families in crisis, pain, or despair. Lord, bless our community marriage initiatives, our leaders and workers, pastors and churches, and volunteers. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
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 Yeah, thank you so much, Suzetta. All right, so first up today on our agenda, we're going to get to hear from Ted Randall of Live the Life in Florida. And since Ted is a pastor, he has a really unique perspective, and I really think that he's going to be able to bring some great clarity on this subject of effectively partnering with pastors. And so the first question that I would like to ask Ted, in the context of connecting with pastors, could you elaborate for us on the significance of building relationships and earning their trust?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember, like, early on being a pastor, I was a community group director. And so one of the things that would happen to me kind of often is I would get marketed towards. And so it would be, a content company that wanted to send me their product, and I wouldn't know them from Adam, and they would, send me something. And I knew, like, some basic sales techniques. They're trying to get something in your hand so that you are more likely to purchase it than send it back, and that, to me, that was kind of off-putting. And I know they had a job and they were trying to do that. But I didn't have a relationship with them, and it felt a little odd. And so one of the things that I pointed to in our communication back and forth is just the idea. It helps so much if you have a personal relationship with someone. So inside of connecting with pastors, if there's an opportunity for you to kind of build upon a relationship that already exists, that makes all the difference. As opposed to, cold calling them is going to happen at some point. But I think what the lessons that we've learned, even here in Bay County, is there's nothing like having a personal relationship with someone in the community. For instance, one of the people that participates the most in the Bay County Marriage and Family Initiative is a person that my wife went to high school with. And the reason he came to the first meeting that we had was because my wife went to high school with him, and she, reached out to him. And Another pastor that participates a lot went to high school with my brother, and so, and even inside of like church planting, it is a different topic a little bit, but church plants to me have worked best where people have context in the community. And I think the same is, it might be similar in the marriage world, is it really, really helps if someone has some context in the community and they can help link you to the pastors, because I think you can just go so much further faster if you have some relational capital that you're building upon, as opposed to starting from scratch. And I know that's not always possible, but that's kind of been the evidence that we've had.
Great. Thank you for that, Ted. I would also like to hear from you and have you share your experience with what do you feel are the best communication methods for reaching out to pastors and following up with them? Do you have any valuable insights or tips in that area?
Yeah, yes. And it's cool. I'm reading a book right now called Deep Work, and it's a really interesting book, but it labels email something I've never labeled it, but email is low friction. So a lot of times the ways that I'll reach out to people, or people will reach out to me, is through a low friction mean of communication. And then we kind of volley back and forth, and I might respond in a couple of days, and I try to respond as quickly as I can. But what I'm basically trying to get to is, what we found to be the most valuable is to call someone, or to text someone. If you use email, and there's nothing wrong with email, and we do it every month, we send out an email, but it doesn't always get answered. It's just low friction. There's no I hate to say it, but there's no pain point for them to answer a phone call or to take a text, and so it can get easily ignored. And so what we found, and even like just simple with attendance for our monthly meetings, we had the best attendance when we pick up the phone and make phone calls. And so another part of that is, I am not good at that. That is not a strength of mine. But my wife is I love the Clifton Strength Finders. She's an activator. And she's also just a networker in general. And so sometimes if you gave me a list of people to call, I would kind of obligatorily call them, and I'd say, hey, I called Carl and thankfully I got his voicemail. I didn't have to talk to him, but my wife would call him until he answered, and then, and then she could have this contact with him. And so, just our little bit of anecdotal evidence, I think phone calls have been really helpful. And also, if you can get together with them for coffee, that's more what I like to do. And so sometimes my wife and I will kind of tag team it. She'll help me make contact, and then I'll ask them for coffee, and we can have a pretty good conversation. But trying to make a really honest attempt at actually having connectivity, as opposed to like a more passive form of communication, I think has been most helpful in contacting pastors.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Ted. I love
Sure.
that you and your wife sound like the perfect team together. She's the connector, and you can take it from there afterwards. And I think that's so important for our teams to know, that you do need that personality that's a connector on the team. That's so helpful.
Yeah. So one of my things is I'm deliberative and she's an activator. And when we found that out, I asked her, I said, hey, have I driven you crazy all these years? And she just smiled and nodded. She said, yes, you have. You have, sir. But it works out well when we kind of live in that tension.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us, Ted. Appreciate you. Up next, we really want you to hear from Bill and Anne McKenna. And Bill and Anne, they're from our Maryland Marriage Initiative, and they have been making an impact in the marriage space for many years. And every time that Carl and I are on a call with Bill and Anne, we just leave just giddy, because they just have so much wisdom to share, and we just love, it's so much fun to get to hear from them. And so I'm really excited that you all are going to get to hear from them. And so let me get them spotlighted here for you so you can see them good. And I would just really like, if it's okay with you, Anne, I'd like to start by asking you our first question. And so what I'd like to ask you is, when it comes to getting pastoral buy-in, we've talked about how it's important to see from a pastor's perspective. And you may see that they know that there's a need for marriage ministry, but maybe they don't have the bandwidth to do it themselves. So, Anne, in your experience, how can we best support pastors in addressing their concerns about finding a leader for marriage ministry?
Well, we're part of our church leadership, so we know pastors are really stretched thin, and their membership, their attendance might be down, their donations might be down, their volunteers are stretched. So they're already a little concerned. And and Bill's usually the front man, okay? He's the relationship person. And usually it might be somebody in the church that opens the door, that they know Bill or us, and will tell their pastor, hey, they're doing this or that. And then he'll open the door and expect a call from Bill. So that opens a door for us. But we're very sensitive to the fact that even though the pastor he may care about marriages, he knows it's important, but he's just maxed out. And so plan B is no problem, okay? No problem. We don't say this, but we can work with this. If you care about the marriages, then here's the things we can do to move forward that won't put a burden on you because they're already on overload. But can you, in some way, convey to your congregation, your parishioners, your group, whatever, that marriage is important? You've heard about this organization, and give us your stamp of approval. And so that may look like just putting it on their website, referral as a resource, giving it to their staff. If this comes up, this is going on, he may promote our events. He may do announcements. Some churches actually do stand-up announcements in person rather than videos and all of that. He may give you 2 minutes and just say, hey, come on over, and I'll stand up and I'll give us a wave and say they're doing an initiative. We're all in, and it's great. And so working with what you can get, just encourage him that this is no problem. We're walking along with you. We can figure this out, because if you care and we care, we're going to both be praying for each other, and we're going to help you make this happen.
Like Ann said, it all starts with the pastor. His leadership, his credibility is so important. And part of our job is to give him a sense of peace about this whole thing. So as we move along with the program, he begins to realize, hey, this is something special. Right. This is something that'll work. And I've got some people here supporting me. And the more support we give him, the more credibility, the better he's going to feel about the marriage program. He said, I've got something here. I know it can work. I know I have people here who can help me make it work.
Yeah. Well, they trust you. I mean, they trust Bill. He's got a reputation in the community of being good for his word. So if we say we're going to show up, we show up.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? He doesn't have to call us, are you coming, and any of this. Some things that pastors have done, they might say, right now we're a little maxed out, but we have a great facility and you're welcome to use our facility. That's huge. So all you really need is their tech person and how you're going to get in the building, you know. Yeah. And if, by the way, if the pastor shows up, this is really good an outreach for them. Because if somebody in their church is coming and they're going to bring their neighbor, you can present this event at their church as an outreach to the community. So, you know, you just have to get creative on how you can help the pastor help his people.
And you'd be surprised sometimes, once the pastor gets into it, it's like Katie bar the door.
Exactly.
They're all on board.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So I think it's just that consistency and building that trust and that credibility. And, you know, when we were visiting with you all, one of the things that you talked about that I just thought was really good advice is you talked about how early on when a church is starting this, that maybe you carry that early energy for them and that you may be the energizer for that first 3 months. And I know that you both talked about hosting an event and then just seeing what volunteers bubble up out of that event. And as you continue to have events, who bubbles up as someone who may be able to take the lead for, you know, that pastor. So would you like to speak into that a little?
I would, if he will let you register the people, all right, then you have the contact list and you have the emails, you have all of that. And then you say, well, if we're going to register them, then we'll have this. And they have the option to unsubscribe. Are you okay with this? We never do anything that
No.
pastor thinks we're going behind his back. And we're going to weasel in there and, I don't know, steal his people or do something. Right? I don't know. So we're upfront. This is the game plan. Are you okay with this? And then if he has an event or sends people, or even better, if he comes and he's got 10 people and then 3 or 4 months later, there's an event he's promoting that we're doing maybe someplace else or whatever, and he's got 20 people, the leaders will bubble up. They just, in a church, you've got a mix of the spiritual gifts and they begin to surface and they'll be texting you or calling you or greeting you or seeing you out. So if you can get it going and sustain it and carry it and take the burden off the pastor 3 months, 6 months, just God moves people to the top.
And I'm
Yeah.
trying to help that pastor find out who their leader might be.
Right.
Might sit down with him after the event with a cup of coffee, like Ted was talking about. I like to do that as well, Ted. Sit down with him, cup of coffee, and let's look at who came and get some input from him as to who he thinks are leaders in his church, and based on them showing up and what they said, we might be able to start developing a leader and eventually a leadership team.
Or even a team leader. Sometimes people, they won't want to be the leader, but they'll be a team leader. You say, okay, you can co-lead. Okay, we'll take co-lead, you know.
Yeah. And you know what I like about what you're saying too there with you're finding the people that the pastor trusts and the people that the pastor has confidence in. And I think that that's so important. The next question I want to ask you, and you know, either of you or both of you can answer. We'd love to hear from both of you. How do you find lay leaders who were going to stay the course and who are going to remain stable and consistently serve in marriage ministry? And, you know, when we talked about this before, I really loved what you guys said, because you talked about helping them find their spiritual gifts. So can you speak a little bit into how important it is to have someone find their spiritual gift and their niche for them to have that sustainability and stay the course in marriage ministry?
It's interesting. We lead a ministry in our church called Prime Timers. Okay. And the first thing we did this year was spiritual gifts, because James says, no eat, no work, no work, no eat. Okay. And so we were just up front. Everybody's on board here. This is a team effort. So whatever people are offering to do, they may say, well, I'll come early and unlock the building. Awesome. Thank you so much. We appreciate. Thank you. Somebody said, I love to bake. I'll make cookies. Oh, thank you. I hate to cook. So whatever they're doing and pointing out that it's a team and you need all of the pieces to make the team work. We just appreciate, we thank, we recognize, we write little notes, and we build them up in front of other people. Like if there's a group and we're so thankful you've invited us to your church or your house, or so it's just common sense to make people feel valued.
Sometimes people don't realize the spiritual gifts they have.
Right.
And that's why maybe spend a little time talking about spiritual gifts and what they mean. And all of a sudden, oh, that's me. I'm good at that. I can, and so all of a sudden you got another one raise their hand. I can do this and I can do that. And this begins to nurture with everybody else to realize they have gifts. In the beginning, when we first started doing that with our program, we had one or two. At the end, we couldn't calm them down. Everybody was ready to go with their gifts.
Right. That's the way we do it. I don't know.
Yeah, I love to hear that because I really do believe that that's the way you're going to engage people, and they're going to find the most fulfillment when they're operating in, their God-given gifts and in their special niche that just is the right fit for them. And that's how they're going to find that sustainability because they're passionate about it. So I think your strategy on that is so good. I love that. Well, thank you guys so much for sharing with us today. We really appreciate you. And up next, we're going to get to hear from Amy Gilford of the Maryland Marriage Initiative. And just so you guys know, this lady, she is doing an amazing job of making an impact on Maryland. She's just, the things she does is just amazing. Like she's huge there in the Maryland area, and she really has become, the voice for marriage there, and people look to her, and we're just really thankful that we get to hear from her today. And so, Amy, the question I would like to ask you today is, can you give an example of an effective approach to engaging a church community and building a team while also keeping it fun and cost effective?
Yes, I will. You're making me cry.
Oh,
It's not about me. I need to understand.
Oh.
I just wanted to add, one of the keys to me, once you have your pastor's buy-in, and I know Bill and Ann mentioned that they wanted to, this is getting that pastor's assistant on board, because that pastor's assistant is the gatekeeper to the pastor moving forward. And that pastor's assistant is the one that connects you to the tech person, which is key to the program. So you get the tech person and the pastor's assistant on board with your pastor, and then you're in excellent shape to begin to working with them and creating a two-step process, which is what we're trying to get to as we begin with them. The example that I wanted to share is my husband is on leadership team in our church. And we were able to partner with our church a few months ago to create a global date night event. This is the first marriage event that our church had in a number of years, even predated, us being there. And MREC already had one tentatively on the books, but our church wasn't ready to take it all on themselves. So we partnered together to put this event on. I pulled in MREC people, they pulled in church people, and together we put on this date night event in that community. And we sold out the whole bowling alley. And under the lights, we had romance, we had fun, we had games, we provided pizza and Coke, and we charged them just $10 for a date night out. And through that sign up and registration, because he trusted us to be able to collect the names and to collect the payment and share that information with them, we were able to go through that list then and work with them to try to find some potential people who would be interested in having a conversation about forming marriage ministry in our church. So then we will have a table now as the fall kicks up, fall activities. There will be a marriage table at the small group sign up event. We will have a table there at that event to, again, bring people alongside, see what their interest is, and working towards what I'm hoping will be our next date night event. It's been popular with us, but we want to do it up in this other community now. It's called a Smoking Hot Date Night. And it has nothing to do with lingerie. It's actually a bonfire. And so we do outside. And so it's really simple to do. Both of these are easy events to help get some traction in our church. You talk about some of these big events might not get the friction and traction that Ted was talking about a little bit ago, because sometimes a big event can seem overwhelming. Our goal is not to go big or go broke. Our job is to like plant seeds, build friendships, build trust as we build our team in our church. And in the meantime, the pastor is referring people to us and allowing us to promote things on their website, just as they're still in this slow cooker process of developing a team. It has taken all year. We're still working on developing our team, but we're working side by side to work together to encourage them where they are in their process. Because the church, they mean well about marriage, but they've got VBS. They've got this Sunday to get ready for. They have vacations. Even though they care, these crisis things keep popping up. They're the priority as we continue to build this. So we'll get it up there, but we're willing. We know that that first and second steps takes the most time to build that foundation to be able to grow more quickly as time goes on. So that's my personal experience with my church.
I love that. And I love your quote, you don't have to go big and you don't have to go broke. Like that's great, because, you know, a lot of times we might think, well, we just can't do that yet because we don't have the capacity or we don't have the finances or whatever. But I like that you're just saying you don't have to go big and you don't have to go broke. It can be easy and simple and you can still get the job done. So I love that. Thank you so much for sharing with us, Amy. Your example is really inspiring to us. And up next, we are going to get to hear from Brady and Melissa Vandeberg of Wyoming Strong Families. And Brady and Melissa, they really are a power couple. My husband and I, we attended one of the marriage ministry workshops that they taught. And they're just an amazing couple. And I'll just tell you, they have so much wisdom to share. So we're excited to get to hear from them. And let me spotlight them for you so you'll be able to see them. Well, here we go. All right. So Brady and Melissa, the first question that I would like to ask you, and either or both of you can answer. We have plenty of time for you both to answer if you'd like. When it comes to engaging with pastors and nurturing meaningful relationships, what approach do you typically take? And is there any specific method that you find to be the most effective in establishing those connections?
Very early on, Carl gave us his wisdom in this area, and it has been invaluable. And that is the power of humble inquiry. He uses 5 questions. And, you know, we found as we were reaching out to pastors, a lot of ours are cold calls still. We're doing a statewide initiative. So we've used our 30 or 40 churches we had initial connections with were easy ones. Now it's the cold calls. But those pastors are busy, and they think you're going to solicit or sell them something. But when we can call and say we're a local marriage initiative that is looking to unburden pastors and help them serve marriages better in their community, and how can we support them doing that? But then if we do get their time, we're very respectful of their time. We actually try to keep our meetings at only about 30 minutes. Pastors can do that. If you try to say, I need an hour of your time, sometimes that's too much. And when we use Carl's 5 questions of humble inquiry, which there's that on the training videos, the humble inquiry 5 questions. And then the last question that we ask is, you know, we ask them their dreams, and then what are their barriers, and then how we can support them, and then just leave with one best next step that we can do to support them. And that feels good to them rather than one next step that we need from them. And they've found that to be much more engaging and can get further with that.
Yeah, I love that. And if anyone would like that video that Melissa's referring to with the 5 questions, please reach out and I'd be happy to share that with you, because that is some really great wisdom. And I'm glad that is working so well for Brady and Melissa. The next question I want to ask you guys is, we've talked some already about the scenario where a pastor is facing the challenge of lacking individuals that are willing to participate in marriage ministry. And you all use something called friend-to-friend training, and that's your strategy. And I would just like for you to share a little bit and give some guidance and suggestions on that.
Yeah, and one great strategy that's already been mentioned is the catalytic event, and Family Life's really good at capitalizing on that. Has already been shared, and out of that, have people fill out a survey of some sort, indicating if they're ready to take their marriage on mission. But if you don't have that catalytic event handy or at your disposal, then you're faced with a pastor who says, "Man, I would love to have this great year-long marriage ministry strategy, but I don't have anybody to step up into that role." And their instinct is, we're praying for somebody like you guys to join our church and lead a marriage ministry. And I'm going to give you an example of a pastor I talked to recently, and I challenged him and I said, "Well, this was a church of probably 200 to 300. I said, God's got that person sitting in your pews right now. You just haven't identified him yet. And how can we identify them?" And so we began this process of working our way backwards of, well, would a marriage ministry workshop be a good thing for your church? And he said, "Man, I would love that, but I don't know who I would invite to the workshop," because the whole idea is to take the load off the pastor, right? We want to raise up those lay leaders. And so then we thought, well, do you have any marriage mentors that are actively, engaging with other couples and mentoring? It's like, no, I don't really know of any. And so we worked our way all the way back to friend to friend. And I explained the friend to friend is basically it's that first responder. Most couples who are in a crisis or are beginning to struggle in their marriage, they're going to turn to a friend before they turn to a pastor or a counselor or anybody else. So friend to friend training equips everybody in the church to handle that first conversation. It gives great ideas on things not to say, things that are going to cause more harm, what things that are really good to say, to encourage them, to point them to Christ, and to hopefully lead them into getting more help. And this is a great thing for the entire church. And that actually got him really excited, because then he saw hope, he saw a path forward. So we went all the way back and came up with a plan. We're going to start with friend to friend for the whole congregation. Then out of that, if you see that little bit of a spark and somebody who really engages, maybe you encourage them to do a marriage mentoring program. And then out of that, you've really identified those who really have a passion and who have that leadership skill. And then we get those groups into a marriage mentoring workshop, and pretty soon you're off and running to a year-long marriage ministry.
Awesome.
That's To Restored is the website for, if you want to look up the friend to friend training. It's from the book Before the Last Resort, his 3 questions that he uses. George, why am I forgetting his last name? Kentworthy, is that it, Carl? Yeah. And there's a video on there introducing it if anybody's interested in checking it out. We've kind of
No, go ahead.
I'd say we've kind of revamped it to make it more interactive rather than just sitting and watching the videos, but we do use some of the videos out of there and stuff. There's great stuff.
Do you mind dropping that title in the chat, and then that way everyone has that in case they would like that information, and maybe the link if you have it, but at least the title, and then everyone can look that up. Well, thank you so much, Brady and Melissa. You guys, as always, you guys have so much wisdom to offer, and we always love hearing from you. And up next on our agenda, we're really honored to get to hear from Ron and Joan McLain of the Fresno area marriage initiative out in California. And Ron and Joan, they bring a wealth of knowledge from years of experience on the front lines of marriage work, as well as facilitating their CMI there in Fresno. So we're excited to get to hear from, it looks like I see Ron there. Let me get you. Ron, you are muted, so if you could unmute yourself. All right, and so Ron, in your view, how can we best align our efforts in marriage ministry with the pastor's vision so that we can maximize our impact?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think this has somewhat been covered by some previous speakers. Something that Carl often says is relationship, relationship, relationship. And when we first started in this line of work in 2004, we discovered we made a lot of mistakes. So you learn a lot by what you shouldn't do, by how you stumble. And so we've learned a lot over the years. We're still learning, by the way. I don't think you ever stop learning. But the most impactful times, I think, in those early years and even now is really trying to find a way to meet personally with a pastor. And I so agree with keeping appointments to 30 minutes if you can. And you'll find that if you do the 30 minutes, the pastor will actually extend that time because I think he'll find that you're really on his team in a sense and have his same vision. An example of this would be, I met recently with one of the pastors at the Well here in Fresno, which is the West Coast representative for Reengage and, Regen and some of those other programs. And so they're actually having a West Coast conference in October. And so we sat down. I knew who he was. We had met before, but I'd never had an opportunity to sit down with him. This was only a couple of weeks ago. And I sat down with him, and my goal going in was to establish relationship and to listen. And we have a whole bunch of stuff we can offer to them. They're already doing marriage ministry effectively. So it wasn't so much me saying, hey, you need to, get off your duff and do something because they're doing a lot. So first sat down, learned a little bit about who he was, his family. That's important, I think. And then basically I just said, I'd love to hear your vision for your marriage ministry. And for about 20 minutes, he spoke and just shared what they're doing. And I wanted to learn from them. And so every once in a while I'd ask for clarification. And so when he was done, I was flabbergasted. I said, you guys are amazing. I said, I want to be like you when I grow up. And so then he asked me, well, what's your vision? And so I said, well, it's actually pretty similar to yours as far as really reaching our whole community with effective marriage education classes and helping people at all ages and stages of their marriage. And so I shared just a little bit about what we're doing. And then before I left, I said, look, we'd like to come alongside you guys and help you. We don't want to highlight who we are. We want to highlight who you are because you're doing a great work in Regen. Most of the churches in Fresno send their people to them for Reengage and Regen. And so I said, how can we just come alongside and help? And so we're going to actually be helping them promote their event. That's something that we can do. And he was just excited to know that, we have a similar vision and that we're actually joining together as a whole community. He loves that vision. And so we're looking forward to work more with him coming up.
I love that. And I love that what you're saying is partner with their vision, find their vision and partner with that. And I love it. I think that
Correct.
Is such an important thing, and having a vision for marriage ministry. The Bible says that without a vision, the people perish. And so it's so important to have vision. And I just came back from vacation where I was able to meet with a pastor who is really on board with marriage ministry. He has a huge vision for it. And knowing that we were going into this call, I asked him the question, what makes you be on board with, what gives you your buy-in for pastoral, buy-in for marriage ministry? And he said that the reason why he's on board and the reason why he has buy-in is because he has a vision for it. And I think that is the basis for all of this, is we need to be casting vision, and you're partnering with someone who has vision. And I think if we can all find somebody who has that vision and partner with them, we're going to see great success. So Ron, I would also like to ask you, based on your experience, what approach have you seen that's just proven the most effective in establishing a network for pastors?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think probably something that we just recently started doing almost a year ago now was having regular, like quarterly pastors breakfasts. In this region, we actually have had these in the past, but they haven't been really regular ongoing, where relationships can be built and continue to grow. So we have a quarterly breakfast for a roundtable discussion for pastors having to do with marriage. And it's a targeted type topic every time, where we actually give away a book for free that has something to do with the topic. Like our first breakfast was The Good News About Marriage, Shanti Feldhahn, I guess it is. Actually, that was our second one. First one had to do with the End Game book, and pastors being first responders and really taking responsibility to be leaders in their church in the area of marriage ministry. So, and then we have one coming up that's going to be on crisis counseling. And we're really asking pastors to come to that with experience that they can share in the roundtable as far as what has worked for them dealing with marriage crisis and couples in trouble, and also things that haven't worked. So basically, it's an idea of coming together and just sharing ideas like we are on this call. And so we're excited about that because kind of a little bit to our surprise, the pastors after each breakfast are just coming up saying, this is fantastic. We have nowhere else to go to talk about marriage, with other people that are actually involved in this kind of ministry. So we're excited about that. We've had follow-up meetings with some of them. We offer a free breakfast. Usually it's a tri-tip burrito breakfast. And if you don't know what that is, talk to Carl. But then also we give a free book, and we ask a lot of questions. One of the questions we asked at our last meeting, Cheryl Belden, one of our partners, Cheryl and Dave, she asked them, discuss this question around the table. If you had all the money you needed, for marriage ministry, how do you think you would use that money? What would you do? What would your goals be? What would your strategy be? Your tactics? And so these guys and gals had so much fun doing that. They were just popping up wanting to share what they would do. So just kind of infusing them with vision and possibilities, just a time to really get together and be excited about what God's doing in our community, and making it more about not just their own church, but the whole community.
I love that. I love that question, because when you ask them, if money were no object, what would you do with marriage ministry? It just opens the door for pastors to start talking about their aspirations and share their visions with each other. I love that you guys facilitated that. That's amazing. And one of the other things, Ron, that you mentioned that's a really helpful tip is you just mentioned the importance of thinking about the day that you do these events and how there are certain days that just aren't convenient for pastors. And would you like to speak to that a little?
Yeah. So I've been on a pastoral staff most of my ministry life since gosh, I don't know, 1989, somewhere in there. I can't even keep track anymore. But it's interesting, because what I discovered was Mondays are often called Blue Monday for pastors, because they're absolutely exhausted, tired, not a good day to try and have an event. And then Fridays tend to be pastors' day off. So those are the 2 days that we avoid. But we ask pastors, what's a good day? What's a good morning? We actually have breakfasts. They just tend to be easier here in the Fresno area than lunches. But lunch is a possibility as well. So yeah, find out what days work for most pastors, and then don't fight against yourself. Don't try and schedule things when pastors aren't available or when it's not good for them. So that's good to figure out. And then what topics they'd like to discuss. What are their needs?
Yeah, that's good. Really good practical advice. And so, Ron, would you share with us what do you think is your proven tactics that you recommend to increase response rates from pastors when you're extending invitations or sending emails?
Yeah, I think free food. That's a big one. Tri-tip is probably Fresno's known for that more than anything here, and mostly we have men pastors coming, and so that's a huge, believe it or not, that sounds like a little superfluous, but that's a big deal for pastors to come and have a free lunch, free dinner. So there really is a free lunch, but it's called free breakfast. But then we also offer a free resource, like a book that they can actually take and continue to read on what we've actually been discussing. And then also something that's been effective is just kind of dripping on our people that we're trying to reach. We have like 60 pastors that we're really focusing on. And so sending, regular short messages to them that we're praying for them, letting them know what's coming up, as far as events that not just we're having, but other churches are having in town. And letting them know that we really care about them. And if they ever have a need, like one thing we've done is say, look, if you have someone on your staff that is having a crisis in their marriage, refer them to us and we'll help either provide pastoral care for that or maybe even help pay for that. So we're trying to be a resource in some ways to help them in that way. I've also met pastors that have reached out to me and we've had coffee and they'll, in confidence share some things that are going on in their own marriage. So, just being able to help their staff or even them is an investment in them and their church. That's been very powerful as well. But yeah, dripping, just letting them know you're there. Drop by a book once in a while. Just, text a note, hey, praying for you, love you, that kind of stuff.
Just that consistent, steady drip, pursuing them with grace. I love that. That's awesome. And another thing that you mentioned, Ron, that I really just loved and wanted to highlight is that you and your team talked about inviting the pastors of churches that your CMI leaders already attend. And since they have a strong relationship with these pastors, that might be the way that you can get them to come. And then those pastors can personally invite their pastor friends. And I thought that was a great strategy that you all have there as well.
Absolutely. Yes. Personal invitation is the best way to invite somebody. And even asking people in your church, hey, do you know other pastors? Do you have a personal relationship with other pastors in the area that you could reach out and invite them to our roundtable? But yeah, start with your strength. Start with people that you know. And then ask them. People are more apt to give you referrals if they've actually, come and been to something and said, man, this is fantastic. And have them reach out to their pastor friends. And you're absolutely right. That's personal invitation wins.
I love that. But thank you so much for sharing with us today, Ron. And up next, we're going to get to hear from Jerry and Kate Angelo, and they are just a dynamic duo, CMI duo in Southwest Missouri. And as many of you know, Jerry and Kate, they've had some really great success with connections. So we really wanted to hear from them today on this subject. So Jerry and Kate, can you share with us what are some of your proven strategies for engaging with pastors and cultivating those meaningful relationships with them?
Sure, great question, Steph. And relationship is everything. And everybody's kind of mentioned that at some point. And Kate and I were talking about this the other day. And we were talking about how it's a lot like you need to evangelize that pastor, just like we do pre-believers. We need to be Jesus to them in their church. So many times they are ministering to everybody and, a lot of them are overdoing it, and who ministers to them. So this really is a really great opportunity that we can be Jesus to them and still benefit the kingdom on what we're called to do. One thing that I like to do, and Ted talked about this earlier about calling versus emailing. And I agree with that. But I like to take it a step further. We like to go to their church and visit with them, make an appearance, meet the pastor. Sometimes people are like, they might try to do too much in that moment, but I think that kind of moment is like for a first impression. And so have your elevator pitch ready, go up to them, shake their hand, introduce themselves, make an impression, let them, so they'll know who you are. And then maybe just give a quick little 30-second, hey, this is what we're doing in the community. And that way that when you do reach back out to connect with them through a phone call, they'll go, oh yeah, that's that couple that was talking about the marriage initiative, versus just doing a cold email that's going to get right into the trash can. So yeah, go to the church on Sunday, make an appearance. I mean, I think they're going to be impressed that you made an effort to go to them, just like Jesus went to the sinners. And not that they're sinners, but we all are, aren't we? Just continue to build that relationship with them, because, and that takes time. So over time, they begin to trust you. The relationship is forming, and maybe offer to do something for them. Maybe take them to dinner. Try to find an opportunity where you can hear their heart and ask them, hey, what's your greatest need? You were just talking about that. Ask them some questions about maybe how you can serve them. And I'm sure that's going to catch a lot of them off guard, because people are always wanting something from them. And, Christ came to serve, not to be served. And so, again, that's another example that we can use when we're building these relationships. Another thing is go to these events. There's all kinds of community events out there, whether it be, whether they're secular or city, or faith-based or at the church, but go to those. Even if you don't go to that church, go to those events. They're on Facebook and whatnot. And that's a place where you can meet them at a human level instead of maybe a pastoral thing, and then just make friends with them. Again, continue to build that relationship. The other thing is once you've established some kind of relationship with them, don't just like use it up for that, I need them to, to do this thing for me. But, relationships last when you are continually reconnecting, almost like a heartbeat. And what I like to do is, so I get in my calendar, maybe this is a little to-do list for everybody here, is get in your calendar, find some times in there, and it doesn't have to be much, where you are going to be contacting, a regular group of pastors, maybe once a month or once every couple of weeks, or whatever it is, whatever works for you. And just call them. And then if you get their cell number, just text them, hey, praying for you, or how's it going? But keep that heartbeat going and maintain that relationship. And because that's really going to be meaningful whenever you do need to partner with them on something. They're going to remember that you stayed in contact with them and without needing anything in return. And I think that, and that's just an investment in time, trust, which builds to relationship. So just stay in a constant relationship with them. Do what works for you. I'm sitting here talking about, hey, go to them, call them up, don't email. Like there's a balance of all of those methods of communication. And you just need to find out what the right recipe is for you, because you may be in a really rural area and like driving to all these churches is like not feasible, or you may be in an urban area where they're all on the same block or something. Just strike the right balance on that. Well, I would definitely reach out to the more personal connectivity versus email. Email them afterwards. That's just like a reminder, or text them or whatever. All of the church cultures are different in all the different cities. So again, do what works for you. But I would also encourage you to cultivate in yourself behaviors that demonstrate good character. And I think it was it Bill and Ann were talking about when you say something that you're going to be there, you're there. And behaviors like that, where pastors can depend on you, they can trust you. So work on that as your own personal development of cultivating those good behaviors. And then when, as you're doing that, you're going to get to a point where you can leverage mutually trusted relationships. And what does that mean? So, for instance, there's one of the senators here that has become, their family has become a good friend of our family. And we do a lot of different things together. And so we've built a nice long-term relationship. And I was asking him, hey, I'm trying to contact somebody over at, one of those churches over there. And he's like, oh, just tell Eddie that they need to talk to you and that I sent you. And so, not that you want to just go around name dropping, because, that's not good either, but leverage those mutual trusted relationships, because that could help you get in the door of a potential opportunity for the kingdom.
Yeah, I love that I love what you said about having a regular heartbeat with the church and the pastors, and that the less you invest, the more they're going to drift, and the more you invest, the closer that relationship will be. I love that, Jerry. So what advice would you offer when a pastor encounters a situation where there are no individuals that are willing to engage in marriage ministry? What's your advice there?
Well, I think Amy talked a little bit about the gatekeepers, not just gatekeepers, but any lay leaders that are there. Again, don't just focus on the pastors. We need to have relationships with all the leaders, because there are some pastors that are really involved, then there are some pastors that are delegators. And if you keep trying to hit the pastor who is a delegator, you're probably missing the boat on trying to get some things done. And so, again, figure out what that situation is, and just keep the relationships going with the pastor, the leaders, and the facilitators and whatnot. But if there's sometimes you do that and there's still no movement. And one thing that I think we can get some wisdom out of this example. We started a crisis counseling ministry in a church one time, and we put all the feelers out. We're like, hey, who wants to help? Who wants to be a part of that? What's the calling? And we got minimal response. And so what I told the pastor, I said, this is what I want to do. I want us to have a service where we're highlighting marriage and marriage ministry and the importance of that. And I said, and at the end, I want to have a call to action. And so, but the most important thing, I think, was that pastor stood from the pulpit and said, this is very important and we need help in this area. So the pastor put a call to arms to everybody, hey, or a call to action to everybody. We need people to come and do this. And so having that leadership go, we need this, that helps. And then we ended up doing like an anointing ceremony of some of the leaders that ended up going through this training program. And when the people saw that, it was like they weren't scared to get involved anymore. They were inspired of seeing that anointing of the program. And so you just gotta keep the leadership, talking about it and expressing the importance. And then there needs to be a public display of what's happening so people can see progress. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, so that's I think that's a way that that you can get more buy-in by people who may not be coming forward. Just demonstrate leadership.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Jerry, one of the things that you mentioned on our call is you said, that you do need that solid relationship with a lay leader so that the church has a replica of you for marriage ministry when they're gone. And I thought that was really insightful, because you're finding the person that you can replicate yourself in so that they have a you when they're gone, the person.
That's right. There's only so much Jerry and Kate that can go around, and we need to make enough of an indelible mark, in not that it's about us, but that the importance of what we're doing is lasting. And so we focus a lot on how can we replicate not just us, but what we're doing, and find champions to take the responsibility of carrying that forward. So always keep that in mind. What is what we're doing a replicatable model, and how can we get that in the hands of other leaders that can carry on that legacy?
And I think you have to remember that it takes time to do all of these things. And in some cases, we're like, let's throw out a big old net and bring in all these pastors and do something. And it takes a lot of time. And some of your relationships that you work on for months or years, that pastor might even just get up and move, and the next person doesn't carry that passion. So you really have to be prayerful in who you are with and vetting the church and the pastor to see how healthy it is. Otherwise, all of your energy and your efforts will fall short. And just like what Jerry was saying in the very beginning, it's similar to evangelizing. You don't just walk up to somebody and say, can I tell you about Christ? Because if you do that, that's fine. They might accept Christ, but then there's no relationship there. And they might not have a relationship with Jesus. But if you can disciple, kind of, like lead them through, show them what it takes to have a thriving marriage ministry and what the purpose is and why, then I really feel like you will have more buy-in. And if there's no buy-in, then you just kind of need to move on to the next church, but keep connecting with that church until the time is right.
Stay guided by prayer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's relationship right there in itself. That's the most basic unit, is a relationship with the Lord.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Lord.
All right.
Don't
Well,
lead you.
I see that there's a question that we'll cover that question in our Q&A, because we've come upon our hour now. So I do want to wrap up today's event by just reminding you guys quickly about our virtual event for marriage leaders and their spouses that's taught by Shanti and Jeff Felton, and it's going to be held on Tuesday, August 1st at 12 p.m. Central. And if you haven't already shared this with your community, it's definitely a gift that you're going to want to be sure and participate in. If you need any further information on that, you can contact me and I can get that to you. So we're going to go ahead and move into our Q&A session. And we understand if you're not able to stay and you need to hop off, that's totally fine. We will be posting the entire training video on our YouTube page. So you can go back and watch any parts that you missed there. So what we'll do for the Q&A is, if you could just raise your virtual hand on your screen. At the bottom of the screen, if you're not familiar with that, it should say reactions. And if you click on that, you'll see some emojis. And just under the emojis, it says raise your hand. So if you'll raise that virtual hand, we'll just go around the room and we'll try to get to everyone's questions. And maybe it's not a question. Maybe you just had some input on the subject and you want to share, and that's fine as well. So Tom, we'll start with you. I see your hand raised.
Yes, I had a follow-up question to Brady and Melissa. Your talk about doing cold calls with pastors. Couple questions. One is, do you always go after the pastor? And I suppose if it's a smaller church, they don't have probably a staff person you go after, but do you call? It was talked about calling, email, texting. And then what is, maybe reiterate, I know you mentioned it, maybe your 30-second pitch as to why you want to meet with them. Because, I'm thinking if you call them and you just leave a message, what do you say that would maybe encourage them to call you back?
Yeah. So a handy tip that Carl gave us too is, every time we meet with a pastor, we ask them, is there anybody else you know of that we should meet with? And oftentimes they'll refer us to other pastors. So even if you have a little bit of a referral, that relationship piece, or we're talking to people in the city and we'll say, well, what church do you go to? If we see they're talking about marriage and family, oh, well, you introduce us to your pastor. We do try to get a little bit of something in there, but we have been making, we actually listed we have 82 pastors in our city, and we're trying to reach out to all of them, and we don't have those. But if I have to leave a message, I say we're a local city marriage initiative, and we're trying to unburden pastors and support our marriages and families in our communities through supporting the efforts that you do in the community to support marriages and families. And usually that we're trying to unburden the pastor is, I think, I don't know, maybe other people have pitches that they've used as well. Carl, I'm sure, could speak to that. But that's really what they want to know, is that you're not trying to add something to their plate or sell something. And so we let them know that we're actively working in the community and just want to know how we can support their efforts that they're doing. Do you have any?
Yeah, no, and just being persistent. Rarely do we ever get a call back after the first message or phone call that we leave. We just got to just kind of, like somebody said, drip in. That's important after the relationship begins, but it's kind of important before. If they keep hearing your voice and keep hearing about Wyoming Strong Families, pretty soon they're like, well, I'm kind of curious. At least these guys are persistent enough. Let's find out what is going on.
And we do try to stop into the church if there is any kind of office staff and introduce ourselves. There's something about being personal rather than just a voice on a phone. But again, that is time commitment.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
I see we have a question in the comments from Marcia. Marcia, would you like to ask your question? Oh, I think you're muted. There
I
you go.
suppose I could. I was hoping to go more incognito here, but I love the level of the intentionality and the engagement and the just how all y'all are describing. I'm curious, how many churches or how many pastors at a time are you diving so intentionally into these relationships? That's for anybody. Several of you have described this very intentional process.
Ours is kind of a tiered approach on that. The face-to-face, where I spend more time, maybe a little bit more effort, a dozen or so. But yet we're also going to do a pastor's lunch in a couple of weeks, and there's probably going to be 50 to 100 people there. So there'll be several other churches represented there. So it just kind of depends on, you know, what your capacity is. If you have the capacity to do a certain amount well, then that's the number that we do. But we still kind of keep the other ones on the peripheral, where if they really want to engage in what we're doing, then we bring them in. But for us, I guess it's around a dozen or so that we're kind of, you know, that we're juggling closely, but the other ones are, you know, are out there on the peripheral.
And that's for you personally, or do you have a team that's attacking? I shouldn't say attacking, that's pursuing those dozen.
We do have a team with other individuals as well. Yeah.
Okay.
So that number might even go up a little bit. Me personally is a dozen, and our team probably has about the same too. The couple teams. So, you know, husband and wife are managing about a dozen or so each, I would say.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak into that for Marcia about how many churches that you're pouring into at one time?
I think in Fresno, we probably highlight 15 to 20 churches that we regularly interact with. We have 3 active staff people that are doing that. You know, it's not every day, but we're, you know, keeping relationships up, and we're dripping on them regularly. And then of course we have, you know, the wider group of 60 to 70 pastors that we email, send invitations to. So we're dripping on them, but not as often as those that are either actively involved in the initiative or working to, you know, continue to build their own marriage ministries.
Yeah. Great. Thank you.
I would say to Maryland, it's about the same as Ron's situation. About the same numbers, same effort.
And I would echo, I think Jerry touched on it. There's going to be a different level of engagement and time commitment for different churches. Not everybody is going to want to really actively engage heavily with you. So it's not, you know, when you talk about a dozen churches or 20 or 30, when we mention that, they're not consuming a massive amount of our time. Many of those we're wishing would develop into greater relationships, but it's a phone call, it's an email every now and then, asking them what they've got going on. Is there anything we can promote? And you'll find there's probably just a handful that really catch the vision and really want to have regular contact.
Would anyone else like to speak into that before we move on to Carl?
Yeah, I would say for us in Arkansas, Central Arkansas, it's the same. Brady, I would second that for sure. It's only a handful that you kind of going, man, if everybody would be like this one, or if everybody would be like that one, some things would change pretty much overnight. But you know, that, I guess that's just not unrealistic. You just keep grinding at it. And big thing to remember, the Lord does the work as we follow him.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Anyone else? And then we'll move on to Carl.
Beth?
Yeah.
Just
sure.
Jerry made a statement a while back, and Ann and I have talked about this before. There are times when that church is not ready to hear anything you got to say. And it's like Jesus said to his disciples, if they're not ready to listen to your message, shake off your sandals and move on to the next one. And that might happen in this situation. But at the same time, I think you still want to keep some kind of relationship with them, because things change. New pastor might come in, there might be some new things happen, and all of a sudden what didn't work 3 or 4 years ago now the climate is different. You got new people, new leaders, and they are now all of a sudden ready to listen to what you got to say. So always keep the doorway open, because you never know when someone's going to step in there and they're ready to move forward.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing, Carl.
Yeah, well, thank you, Stephanie. And by the way, I want to say, if anybody needs a master class in how to facilitate a conversation, I think you just saw it today. Stephanie, you just exhibited the gold standard of how to facilitate a great conversation. So well done. I'm going to share a screen because I just wanted to share one thing with you all. We're not in sales, right? But there's a lot that we can learn from sales. And one of the things that I'm bringing this slide up because in so many of the things that all of you shared, I saw little elements of how to handle rejection. And here's five things I think that we need to cultivate in our approach that helps us handle rejection. Number one is don't take it personally. You just never know what's going on in people's lives. You never know what's going on in a church or in a pastor's life. If they don't return your call, if they're not ready to work with you, don't take it personally. You are offering something incredibly valuable to your community, and God will give you the right people. The second, and I heard this from so many of you, you talked about the process. I think half of our speakers today talked about an element of their process. Think about your process. If you're not being able to build relationships, how do you change the process? I'll introduce a different thing. I did a lot of sales back in the day, and one of the things we used to do is mail a letter in the mail, with a stamp. And in the letter, I would say, and I would handwrite it on there. I said, I'm going to reach out to you in a couple of days. Just really, really excited to talk to you. So they get this letter in the mail and they're like, oh my gosh, this guy's going to call me. And they may choose not to answer the call, or they may choose to answer the call. It's surprising how well that worked. So think about your process. The third is cultivate a healthy mindset. Again, now this is really silly, but this is what they taught us in sales training. They said, remember this, no really means maybe, and maybe really means yes. So everyone is saying yes, go team, I tell you what, I don't know. That's kind of silly, but I don't know. The human part of this is you gotta cultivate a healthy mindset. It's like we're offering something of great value, and so we're going to really work on that. Keep cultivating that mindset. The next, practice your skills. Melissa Vandeberg, she reminded me of this. And Melissa, you said your little script twice. You talked about what you say. And so you're practicing your skill. You're honing as Jerry said, your elevator pitch. And I put to practice my skills, I put little sentences on my door right here. And so every time I go in and out the door, I practice that sentence. And if you practice your skills, that you can be much more effective. Another thing is, they teach you this in sales. You need to put on anytime you're leaving voice messages, you need to remember to smile. Smile while you're leaving the voice message. It changes your tone of voice. It adds a little bit more positivity. And then finally, celebrate your success. Remember to stop and create something intentional that when we have a success, we're gonna do something as a team, or we're gonna celebrate this something, or we're gonna do something to celebrate a success, because this is hard work, and you need to create rewards that will give you the motivation to stay in there and to keep going. So a few words of wisdom from the world of sales, but I think all of you are practicing these things.
Yeah. Thank you, Carl, for sharing that. I think I saw, Dennis, you had your hand raised. Did you have something you would like to share, or did I missee that?
It was really just a question for Jerry on his, I'm intrigued by your comment about stopping by the church. And it sounded like you were saying basically stop by on Sundays. Is it, do you time it at the end of the service? Are you sitting through a whole service? Are you going to the office after? Maybe paint that. Just had a question about that.
Sure. You know, most of the time when you go to a church, it's really difficult to get to the pastor. But on Sunday morning, they typically will come out and hang out by the altar and do a meet and greet. And so that's like your opportunity to get your face and your handshake and maybe some inspired words to them without any handlers or gatekeepers or anything like that. And so maybe I should have highlighted that a little bit better, Dennis. Thanks for reminding me. But it's kind of like, you know, when you're going to meet a celebrity or a politician or something, like if you can get to the meet and greet, then you can get in there. Well, it's the same thing with the pastor, because if you try to do it during the week with a phone call or an email or whatever, or a pop in, there's the difficulty level is a lot higher. But if you can break the ice, then it's like, oh yeah, let's send that guy through. And so I do both. I meet them on Sunday for a very short period of time. And then I say, hey, I'm going to reach out to you, much like Carl's letter. I'm going to be coming by and I'm going to take you to lunch, or, you know, something like that. And so it's always definitely a follow-up when I meet with them during the week.
So Jerry, on that, do you basically time your visit so that, okay, figured the service starts at 9, I'm going to stop by around 10? Is that, or do you actually sit through the whole service?
Oh, I'll go through the service. Many times we'll go through. There have been times when we kind of cheated a little bit, where we kind of came in on the tail end of a service, but it was probably because we went to 2 other services before that. But I try to, you know, and then don't sit in the back. I sit in front, so they see, so they know that you're new and that, you know, you're interested. And anyway, so I really do. I mean, you are going to get the best, whatever you put into anything is what you're going to get out of. And so be genuine, and you'd be surprised what the Lord is going to do with that kind of effort.
What's interesting on that, Jerry, is I often when I'm teaching empathy in a class, I'll say, actually, if you look at how Jesus operated, he practiced empathy. That is, he left his world of heaven, came down to our world and joined us. And that's how we showed his love. And then you said, love one another as I've loved you. And if you think about it, Jerry, that's kind of what you're demonstrating here, right? We're leaving our world, which is our office, our environment, and we're going into the church's world. And then if you've sat through the whole thing, you have an opportunity then to comment on something that they said and use it as a bridge. So yeah, interesting. So thanks, Jerry.
Yeah, no problem.
Great. Does anyone else have any questions? I don't see any hands. All right. Well, if not, we will go ahead and conclude our training event on partnering with pastors. And once again, I just want to thank you guys for joining us today. This has been so much fun for us and so insightful, and we hope that you enjoyed it and that it was beneficial for you and your teams as well. So don't hesitate to reach out to us if there's anything we can do to support you, and you guys have a great weekend. Goodbye.